Hey, everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT here on Next TMT Talks. 1 year into this grand experiment in DIY journalism with my co founder and colleague, Daniel Frankel, talking about all things technology, media, and telecom. This week, we'll be looking at OpenAI's new Sora social media app, which is drowning us in deepfake videos. Bari Weiss takes over as editor-in-chief of CBS News, whatever the heck that means. Apple's Vision Pro will take Laker fans courtside, courtesy of Charter. 13 million more reasons why David Ellison should pass on buying Warner Brothers Discovery, and Amazon approaches multi-platform ubiquity. So, hi, Daniel. You're just hot in from the desert, I understand. So, welcome back to the comfy confines of Los Angeles.
Yeah, good to be here. The 60 freeway. There's nothing quite like it.
And aren't we glad of that? Though I'll be rolling down those roads too in a few days. So, I had a lot of conversations this past week, and Hollywood is certainly having lots and lots and lots of conversations about the new social media app for deepfake video that came from OpenAI based on its Sora 2, its latest version of its text to video tool. It's hard to get onto the app, but lots of people have. And they have made lots and lots of videos, some of which have really, really, really alarmed folks in Hollywood in particular. If you're famous and have a face that makes you a lot of money, the last thing you want is jerky people taking your face and doing things with it that you control. And there are only modest guardrails, as they call them, on this app. Where do you think this is headed?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Robin Williams deepfakes. That's somebody people like who it wasn't recently, but recently enough they passed away, and it's a little jarring. It seems like OpenAI was a little slow out the gate to respond. They have responded. They're going to go back and look at it and see how copyrighted IP is getting in there, and they said they're going to do something about it. Yeah, I can see why people are upset.
Well, it's not just that. I interviewed, for instance, Luke Aragoni, the CEO of a company called Loti, Loti. Our newsletter has a short video clip of my conversation with him. But more generally, his company works with several thousand prominent people, many of them through talent agencies and management firms and stuff, to take down what he said is tens of thousands of deepfake videos every week. His business has doubled in the last couple of weeks. And I don't doubt it.
He's of the National Name Copyright Act. When Napster was at its peak, all of a sudden they decided to take all that stuff off the internet, and it was a massive scouring project.
Yeah. Well, I was involved in some of that when I was at MGM. I was a VP of corporate communications, but one of the people that represented the company at the MPAA, whose biggest job was trying to combat online piracy, and actually not just online piracy, but copying in DVDs and VHS all over the world. And I was up close enough to it to just see some of the numbers, which were really kind of eye popping. And the criminal gangs out of Russia, Malaysia, that were grabbing copies of stuff about a minute and a half after it became available anywhere, and flooding the streets in lots and lots of places. And it's only changed in that it's less of a physical product in that regard. Still an issue, but this is very personal. It's not just your movie gets ripped off; it's your face, and then you get shown doing something you don't want to be doing. It could, if you're not prominent,
Yeah,
people don't know you. It's a problem.
you're catching the internet at a point where there's just so many users, and I don't know that you can police all of it. It does seem like a problem. I don't know how Sam Altman controls it at this point.
Well, he's as another person that I interviewed that I've also put in a short video clip, Christina Aguilera, and it's not that Christina Aguilera. This one is a longtime technology executive, worked at Amazon and other places, has her own, a co-founder now of her own AI consulting firm called Synthis, but she's also importantly the president of the Hollywood Foundation of Women in Technology. As she put it, deepfakes hit with women a little differently than they do with, rich, wealthy, famous guys like Mark Cuban or Jake Paul, who both said, Sora 5D, I don't care. It's like, dude, it's just different for you than it is for, I think, pretty much any woman, but definitely the kinds of folks that might be victimized here with really crummy stuff from folks
I'm
for harassment or whatever. Dan, talk to me a little bit, if you could, if you can understand me. Dan, talk to me a little bit about where things go. I mean, Christina Aguilera, who I interviewed, and whose video clip we also include in the newsletter, her point was you need to put guardrails in, and they really didn't. And those guardrails are things like, it's one thing to say generally you can have my image, but only I can use it, or you can have my image and only my friends can use it. But even then, if your friends take it and are kind of doing dumbass stuff or jerky stuff, she's saying you should be able to review each video that includes your face and say yay or nay. And
Sure,
that's like,
a lot to
okay,
add. I think the strategy has kind of been revealed. It's sort of take liberties and ask for forgiveness later. I think
right.
that's here.
That was revealed, I think, wasn't it in the Social Network with Mark Zuckerberg 20 years ago? I think it was pretty well laid out there.
Listen, OpenAI is, you look at those chat GPT numbers, and it's nearly 800 million users worldwide.
Yeah, far faster than the internet got there, that's for sure. And anything else, really. I mean, the numbers are pretty eye-popping, and that is for ChatGPT, which is the
Right.
older sibling, shall we say, of Sora, which has only been out 2.5, 3 weeks.
There are a lot of funny forces in the room with Sam, IM, and I think the priorities of, what was it, 2020, or whenever they had with Elon Musk, and they were going to control it, and it wasn't going to get out of hand on their
It was
watch.
going to be a nonprofit for the good of mankind, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, well, when you start to get that $500 billion valuation, and your employees can sell a tiny little bit of stock for $6 billion, which is bigger than just about any IPO this year. I mean, that's a little something just to cover their overhead up there in Silicon Valley. Yeah, there's definitely money to be had, and some of the niceties may not be observed quite as much as they might otherwise. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because this is out in the wild significantly, and it is getting messed with significantly. Things like watermarks that say, "Hey, this is fake," are easily eradicated in Adobe Premiere or Photoshop. You can get rid of it. So that's like one thing to say this isn't real, but the thing that says it isn't real is also not hard to get rid of. So that's yet another thing that should be burned into the video somehow.
Speaking of big things that are hard to get rid of, some of the noise coming out of advertising week, and make sure I don't want to say ad week, my former employer, because they get very offended, because that's a very special brand.
Very special brand that no one cares about anymore. But hey, they still do good work. There's still good journalists over there.
Advertising week was a conference in New York, and the buzz coming out of there was that Amazon, you've heard it before with their demand side platform, they're unstoppable. I mean, they've got like ways to just take you entirely through the process and show you look, that ad bot got this guy in Des Moines to buy a widget.
Yeah, the attribution component here is pretty much the famous line in advertising was the department store owner who says, "I know I'm wasting 50% of my advertising spending. I just don't know which half." Well, with this, you know where things are going, and you're knowing if it works, and how much and how fast and with whom.
There's not even close to competitive offset. It's, where does this go? Because they haven't been doing it that long. I mean, it's been 5 or 6 years that they've been in at this game.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think the thing that's also easily overlooked is it's only been a year and a half, I believe, since they flicked the switch and made everybody on Amazon Prime Video an ad-supported subscriber, unless you explicitly opt out and pay more money, which probably a tiny portion of people do. You are getting ad-supported video when you watch, anything, not just the Thursday Night Football, but anything on there. And by the way, they're going to have an NBA game every week, or a doubleheader, I think, every week beginning this season in a couple of weeks.
They crucial live sports. They got their hands in everything, and because they can advertise the best and deliver the best, kind of in fulfillment of that, everybody distributes. There's not even a question who you distribute through. mean, you have to, some of your goods have to go there because you have to, put some through the filter to see where they go. So it's,
It's interesting because we for a long time, it was Facebook that was the most efficient deliverer of lots of data tied to actual purchase, right?
right.
It still is, still big. It's the thing that's floating its stock, et cetera, et cetera. But it hasn't really made up ground in the AI space in quite the way his spending would suggest. Actually, the fact that he's spending as much as millions of dollars hire away big name AI researchers suggests it hasn't gone well for Meta in this regard. And they haven't gotten to the metaverse yet. So that was the giant pivot before. So he's still making tens of billions of dollars a year. Let's just be clear. No one's going to worry about Mark Zuckerberg's next meal. But it doesn't feel like they're leading the pack.
Let's move on to speaking of the metaverse and kind of artificial things. I think I told you this before. About 10 years ago, I saw a VR demo. It was like a Golden State Warriors Cavaliers game. I think it was the height of Curry versus LeBron. And they had you sitting courtside. This was 10-year-old VR tech. And I'm thinking every sports fan's going to want this, and they'll overpay for it because this is literally like sitting courtside. You may have a camera there. And 10 full years later, but Charter, I guess through some kind of partnership with Apple and their Vision Pro, is letting their RSN, Spectrum Sportnet, which is the Lakers channel.
Yeah.
If you have broadband through Charter or video or both, you have that channel. You can watch the Lakers sitting courtside this year, which is a pretty cool thing.
It's only some games. I do want to say, Apple has a huge
Right.
operation in Culver City. Where Charter is located is over in El Segundo, which is all of about 4 miles away. I suspect this wasn't a big challenge because Apple is furiously looking for cool new things to put on the Apple Vision Pro. I have one. I love it, but it is heavy. And it's interesting to look at that and see what the audience might be to watch those games live. I think they'll be cool. Let me finish. I think that'll be fun to watch those games on your headset, but I think the really interesting play is also happening in that area on the west side of the Los Angeles sprawl in Inglewood, next to SoFi Stadium. There's a place called Cosm, which is the world's greatest idea for a sports bar ever. And it is a shared immersive space with a big ball of a screen. So you can watch an NFL game on, or an NBA game on, or a World Series game on. Should the Dodgers get there again this year, they'll be charging $200 a ticket for you to watch it and be completely immersed in it. And you're doing it with 180 of your closest random, seatmates, which is a much different, much more engaging and involving experience for a sports fan than just being able to put on the Apple Vision Pro, which again, I love, but it's heavy and it's a little solitary.
Right. Well, I mean, speaking for immersive experiences in general, it's a step in that direction. And I don't know which games or how many specifically are being offered that way. This was part of a larger set of announcements that Charter Communications and their CEO, Chris Winfrey, made in New York last week. The big one being their new app store. They've gone to this trouble of resetting pay TV, as we've talked about myriad times in the past. They're distributing all the SVODs, the ad-supported SVODs, at no additional cost to the consumer. The logic being is, you get the content that way, or you get the content through the bundle. But you're going to get the content. We're not going to let you get it cheaper outside of our bundle.
It's interesting because we're at about a 2-year anniversary of the Disney standoff that led to this new Chris Winfrey paradigm, as we're going to call it from now on. But it was about 2 years ago, pretty much now, that Disney ran up the white flag and said, okay, we're in. And back then they didn't even get to take along their lesser cable channels. I understand those channels are back in the latest as Diginets.
That's solved all kinds of merchandising problems for Charter. Video is a very necessary component to high-speed internet. It allows them, you want to do it this way, you want to watch Disney Plus, you don't want to watch the Disney Channel, fine. We'll get you a streamlined app box and watch away. But the new development is they have their own app store. it lets them keep owning the experience. They're not disaggregating, but they are collecting the bill. They are collecting data, as far as I can tell.
Right.
And
If you're the intermediary, as Amazon shows, right? Speaking of everywhere, Amazon is the data owner and it's the check collector and passes it along to all those people on the Amazon channels operation. So this is more of that.
and also in Winfrey's discussion last week, we have the video. He talks about this is a Stamford, Connecticut-based cable company seriously interacting with Silicon Valley companies like Apple and ostensibly OpenAI for whatever glass device comes next, he said. And what they're pitching is basically, it's not just us, but we're about to buy Cox Communications. They have the goods. Our partner Comcast has the goods. Pretty soon, we're going to hoist for you a national network that's incredibly fast, 10 gigabits per second, public and seamless. Basically, you have a device wherever you walk outside, wherever you go, you're connected that way. And I think that's kind of a really good position if you're cable and you want to own broadband and for the next 10 years. That's a good way to do it is, partner on the ground floor of the device level. It's about to be transmogrified and changed by someone.
Well, I agree with you, though. I mean, the cost of putting in 10 gigabit fiber everywhere they want to be is not inconsequential. I will also say that for what it's worth, the cable companies have spent God knows how many tens of billions of dollars on technology over the last 50 years. So it's not like they just discovered, oh, what are these engineer dude people do? We didn't make it a SCTE, but that's all about that, right? That's just about a bunch of, and NAB, which is coming up, I think, next week in New York. NAB is a whole bunch of broadcasting technology and video delivery technologies. DOCSIS 4 is one you can tell, but I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff there. Neither of us have much knowledge that is really where they've been. So they're marrying up with new sources of cable stuff. One of the people I saw at the Infinity Festival last week was the head of technology for Sinclair, and it was interesting to hear him talk.
Mark Aitken?
No, his name is I'll have to look it up, but he's the head of technology, and he's old school. He's an SVP, and he was talking about being in LA the week before to talk on an extended basis with the Tennis Channel, which they own,
Right.
and about where the Tennis Channel is going to be. The Tennis Channel's done fine on cable for its very hardcore fan base, but they recently launched, I think in the last year, an app called T2, which basically, as it is now, they've got off of the way they were delivering their signals, and now it's all over internet protocol. So it's got a lot of redundancy, backups, not as much chance of interruptions. But instead of going out to like Indian Wells around the corner from where you all have that home in the desert for the gigantic tennis tournaments there, and showing only what's on center court, which is what they used to have to do because of the cost of satellite delivery to 4,000 cable providers. They have all 30. They have all 30 courts going at once, and the people sitting in the Tennis Channel operations far, far away are sitting there going, okay, there's a hot match right there, or there's the one with Alcaraz. We're going to cut to that. Boom, boom, boom. And on T2, you can see any of all 30 of those. So all of a sudden, it's transformed what's possible for this very narrow but specific hardcore fan base of folks. And that's where they're thinking about a broadcasting company thinking about technology for one of its, little secret ownership, things that it owns. It's sort of an interesting thing to see how they're playing that on. Just thinking about what does the Tennis Channel look like in 6 years or 9 years from now. So interesting stuff.
I'm just trying to figure what ESPN's going to look like in a year.
In 1 year,
you've got the top college football analysts, respected prognosticators want to go complete MAGA and throw their hats in the ring.
Right. Well, they mistake the fact that they get ratings with the fact that somebody will vote for them as opposed to somebody else. And having a bully pulpit does not guarantee that you'll get a a collective base of support. Now, Paul Feinbaum, a longtime SEC reporter, commentator who's now on ESPN for the SEC network, in Alabama, it might work. He's trying to replace, he's apparently interested. He told a podcaster that he was interested in running for the seat that's about to be advocated by perhaps the dumbest man in the U.S. Senate, a former Auburn University football coach named Tommy Tuberville, who wants to run for governor. And if you start to notice a bit of an SEC football pattern in politics in Alabama, there's a reason. It kind of works for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily work for the Republic at large, but hey, Alabama was never really concerned about that. Just see also the Civil War or civil rights. They're not big on those things. So why start now with progressive, thoughtful politics? So anyway, Feinbaum, who's apparently Republican, though he never really advanced much in the way of political.
It's about like secretary and schemes and
yeah, he's really good about talking about which football coach is on the hot seat, for instance. But I don't think he's ever been on the hot seat, which is definitely different than what happens when you run for a political office. Bomani Jones, we included a clip on this, had lots to say about the problems it puts ESPN in, about him if he actually throws his hat in the ring. Because then it gets to be complicated with equal time provisions and stuff like that. And it just looks bad. Like, are you helping him run for office? Is that something you think is appropriate? Bob Iger. This is one of the ways to make nice with,
you can't. Politics is everybody's so passionate about it right now on really kind of mostly a not so informed level. I mean, I wasn't into it 20 years ago. It causes some strange decisions. And
Right.
One of the decisions is Bari Weiss. I mean, even before she got the door, I guess she wrote what I thought was a pretty innocuous.
It was pretty innocuous. It was a sort of thing, upbeat. Hey, we're all on the same team. We're going to work together to make a better, smarter, more forward thinking, but it's all great. We're all going to love each other. It's going to be fantastic.
She said, tell me what you're doing. She didn't say, itemize what you've done over the past 7 days.
Right. It wasn't send me a list of 5 things that you did that mattered this week, unlike, say, Elon, Mr. Warmth, as we like to call him. It was not that. But the problem is the fear and loathing is bad.
I did kind of a deep dive into Bari Weiss, and she does seem to have, my take on her, as a Jewish man, she's a Jewish woman. I know October 7th impacted me and how I felt. I was very, very upset. And I think she was more so. I think, she was already, her belief system was already undergoing some change. I think it's informed by that. But I do think that she doesn't strike me as really disingenuous, but she does seem to be down this road of following some very right-wing thinkers. One of them is the Heritage Foundation. She quoted some of their policy experts talking about how, and this is a video, she's with a English foreign policy expert, a guy who works for a conservative think tank.
Well, Niall Ferguson is more than that. Niall Ferguson is a best-selling author who's written numerous highly regarded books. I mean, he's not just some random dude who, fell off the turnip truck in Manchester or something. I mean, he's a public intellectual at a time we don't have many of those. So I just want to say he's not just anybody.
He was the one who dialed her back. She was quoting the Heritage Foundation and saying what we should do is focus all of our coins, because we don't have unlimited resources, focusing on making an enemy of China and declaring Cold War on them. And Noel says, maybe that's not such a great idea because the relationship is challenged now, but it'll be really screwed up then. And then you get a real problem.
Well, and one need merely look at the Chinese saying, hey, we're going to put the clamps on all the rare earth, the 90% of the rare earth minerals that the West needs. We're going to put the clamps on that. And Trump's response of, hey, we're going to put 100% tariff on top of the ones we already have in place. And the stock market going, holy shit, to use the technical term.
It was the other direction. You had like CBS, you have the new editor-in-chief of CBS, and he said we should storm, go to Detroit, storm Ford. We need to seize the means of production. We need the workers of the world union to unite. We need to get our hammers and sickles out. Because that's kind of how it sounds. It's like, that's not a good idea if you support American capitalism, which we do.
We're trying to be capitalists if we were just better at it, unlike Bari Weiss, who apparently has a lot of friends with
It's like, long story short,
12-figure budgets.
She is a budding right-wing extremist. I do think.
I think that is a gross oversimplification. So this is a woman who supports abortion rights, which is definitely not something you see on the right wing. In a state like Iowa, that is the only reason many people vote for somebody. Are you anti-abortion? She is clearly in favor of some rights for lesbians, gays, and others of the queer universe because she's married to a female journalist who works with her.
A few items in the grocery bag that don't.
Those are pretty big ones. I'm sorry. I covered politics. I know what's big. Those are big.
She is presented to the administration. Look, I hired Bari Weiss. How about you let me buy Warner Bros.? That's how this strikes me.
Which leads me to the next thing. Our dear friends over at Lightshed had a little note out. There was our former colleagues at the Penske Trades had nothing but hosannas. Look, Superman, the underperforming superhero movie that brought in about $615 million worldwide, but costs at least $225 million to make. And by the way, there's a really interesting divergence between that $225 million talked about street number of production costs and what they filed with the Ohio state government for their tax.
I don't think they prop up the theatrical paradigm just to keep their business model intact.
No, but anyway, so and then another $125 million to market. So there's no way they made money off the theatrical release. So they go and they take it out, and in the first 10 days, 13 million views of Superman on HBO Max. Isn't this an amazing number? This just shows that all the money they spent to promote this thing in theaters paid off with big viewership. Guys at Lightshed, actually, there's this little movie called The Wrong Paris. It's set in Paris, Texas, shades of them vendors, not Paris, France, where I just was. And it's just it's a cute, useless, dumb little rom-com. It cost probably $38.12 to make, and shot in Texas, so the tax credits were probably at least as good as they were in Ohio. And it made 35 million views in its first 10 days. Didn't spend a nickel on promotion. Didn't lose money, therefore, on everything it did. And they're saying, okay, so here's what happens with the Netflix approach. Here's what happens with the legacy IP run through the mill over it, and that was a movie that got pretty good reviews. I was talking to a friend yesterday. He's like, I'm watching it the second time. I thought it was a pretty good movie, and he used to work with Quentin Tarantino, for God's sake. So he's been around some serious movie geeks, if nothing else. But it way underperformed. And the point they're making is, don't David Ellison. I mean, this is why Netflix is not going to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. We kind of knew that. But I said, don't, David Ellison, make the mistake of spending more money on legacy IP you don't really need when you should be focusing on A, figuring out how to do better with what you already have, and B, create new stuff. Buying more old stuff and reissuing it isn't necessarily going to solve any problems. It's going to give you more debt.
Educate me for a second here, because I thought Superman was good enough for David Zaslav to continue the streak. He had some incredible run of hits since April.
Do you think, and I'm just going to throw this out there, that the publicity people for David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery may have been somewhat free in their definition of what is a hit? Helped by, I might add, and we have talked about this in the column, helped by friends who write about each week's releases in theaters, because that's their business too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they might be not fully arm's length and skeptical. You and I bring a somewhat more skeptical eye to this stuff. And, if you just look at the numbers, they really don't pencil out great. They don't.
The video is in our Garden of the Lights this week. It's Greg Peters, co-CEO of Netflix, appearing at Bloomberg's Screen Time.
which was one of the many many conferences in the last 10 days. So yes.
Yeah. Point Lucas Shaw, who couldn't get him to talk about too much new, but he did talk about the backbone to how they deliver content, Netflix. And it's a lot of, for me, a lot of gobbledygook, but it does seem to be just getting better. I mean, instead of going out and spending tens, hundreds of millions of dollars on promotion, you can find something sticky and you can find the people who will enjoy a long day of work or school. And it seems like they're just getting better at taking a very efficiently produced content that's very targeted and sending it right there.
Right. And they're producing it all over the world with probably not as much need, though they'll take advantage of, production credits in Texas and Ohio and Georgia, Vancouver and Toronto. But also, they're making stuff in South Korea where they have a $2.5 billion investment in production facilities, and Australia and New Zealand, and on and on and on and on and on. The production credits in England are nuts. I was chatting at the festival, the Infinity Festival on Thursday, with a woman who does sort of AI assisted motion capture. She got a little company that she started 2 years ago after working for like Weta and Marvel. So she worked with some of the biggest, best in the universe. She's from New Zealand originally. But she's got a 4-person team. They just kind of float in. They do their little mocap. You don't even have to wear the mocap suits anymore. They just put them right on your costume, and you do your stuff, and boom, it's in the scene.
I just bought so the light bulbs on. I just bought one.
Yeah, well,
it's out of fashion.
I'm actually just a deepfake skin over my own self. I've often been accused of that, but that I just find it really interesting as this business is transforming. David Ellison may in fact buy Warner Brothers Discovery because it's a nicer lot than the one in the middle of Hollywood that Paramount's at. He might do that because Daddy's got $250 billion in his back pocket. Or he did last week before Trump's tariff announcement. And he might do that, but it's really hard, I think, to figure out why that's a great deal if you're actually thinking about the future of any of these operations. Yes, you need scale, but buying a bigger library of old stuff isn't scale. Production facilities, when you can just lease them when you need them, is not scale. I mean, you can go find a soundstage. God knows there's plenty of them in Southern California and far beyond. I don't know what the upside is.
Gold. Come on.
What?
You own the Sopranos reruns.
Yeah, like live long and prosper, man. I mean, whatever. You own the Star Trek reruns, and there's a lot more Star Trek people than Sopranos people. Let me tell you. There are.
Might be catching up. It's. I've started my third binge, so
Okay, and I'm just saying, there's a lot more Trekkies. This is a worthwhile poll if we ever figure out how to do polls in this thing because we're so technologically forward.
We do. People ignore them.
Are you a Trekkie? Are you a Star Wars fan, or are you a Sopranos fan? Which one is your IP franchise to live and die for? All right. I'm going to guess third on that list of 3, Sopranos. So I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. And of course, David Zaslav will be highly to make a deal because that is what his new contract motivates him to do. If he can sell it for something like at least $16.74 a share, I think that's the number. It's right in that ballpark. If he sells it for at least $16.74.
Well, what's the state's name again? Robert Evans owned it. I think there's a Valhalla something.
Oh, the estate. Well, yeah, big deal. So what? He made $51 million, I think, last year, and but the deal is his new contract doesn't pay him on cash flow, which is what the old contract paid him on, and it doesn't pay him. What it pays him on is if he sells it for at least that price, that strike price, as it were, by the end of next year, and he's still the CEO. Then he vests 400 million shares in the company at that point. And if you want to do the math of 4 times 1676 or whatever, That ends up being $500 million. It's not bad. You know, if it's way more than that, what am I talking about? 16. No, it's more like that's a lot of money. It's a lot more money. I see. I'm such a lame ass entrepreneur journalist. I can't even do 1676 times 400 million. I'll
Well,
get back to you.
in the 2 years, you better get used to those kinds of numbers, my friend.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like soon. Soon, we're gonna be like multiplying like Bari Weiss. I actually wish somebody would do like a deep fake of Bari Weiss, like swimming in a vat of money to one of the Barry White songs. See that would be.
I'm going to take your sort of imagination, let it get some rest.
I heard doing this like a backstroke, like Scrooge McDuck,
Yeah.
in a giant vat of money.
I don't want to see
it up in
that.
the air. That's a Sora project waiting to be done. If you go out there, whoever's listening, and you do decide you want to do that with your Sora access,
If you don't call Sam Altman feckless next time, and
no, I'm totally calling him feckless. Dude, he is the epitome of feckless because he don't care. It's like throw it out there, see what happens. Oh, let's just count the messes over here. We got to clean up. Big deal.
Oh, David
No, that's just overhead. It's just overhead. So, there's no other way to look at it. Pretty interesting time right now, I think. It's really fluid and messy. But so I'm going to be over on the Amazon campus tomorrow for the Culver Cup tied to AWS, still the biggest cloud provider, which is a good place to be when everybody needs cloud computing to be able to run their little AI LLMs and stuff. And they're going to be showing some of the things that some of their clients do. So I look forward to that. And then I'll be on the 60 like you were, adding to other cool places.
Some of those cloud guys, they pick your pockets and they'll pay your bills. So you got to be watching out for. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have to talk about that more in the future because one of the fun parts of being an entrepreneur is
we'll get
a
libel lawyer next to us. Make sure we don't.
Yeah, right.
All right,
anyway,
Dave. Thanks for carrying us through.
This is a good time, a good place to wrap it up. But Dan's back in town, so don't be bad because Dan the man, he's here, he's looking at you. I'm David Bloom with Next TMT audio video podcast. You can hear us on Spotify, on other audio outlets. You can see us on YouTube, and you can certainly subscribe for free to our weekly newsletter. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.